What if I told you that thousands of years ago there were cities with grid-based streets and sophisticated plumbing? Now what if I told you those same bustling cities, home to potentially millions of people, just vanished? This isn't a sci-fi plot. We've got the ruins to prove it, but the people who built them are gone. These weren't just a few scattered settlements, they were true super-civilizations, hubs of innovation and culture that reached incredible heights before being practically wiped from the history books, leaving behind some of the greatest enigmas we've ever faced. So, what could make an entire highly advanced society collapse? Was it war, a plague, or something else entirely? The clues are buried in desert sands, hidden in dense jungles, and even submerged beneath the waves. While we don't have all the answers, archaeologists are piecing together the theories behind their silent disappearance. Today, we're decoding the clues left by these lost worlds, from the meticulous city planners of the Indus Valley to the pyramid builders of Mesoamerica. Section 1. The Harappans, the meticulous planners. Our first stop takes us to the vast plains of modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, once home to one of the most sprawling and sophisticated societies of the ancient world, the Indus Valley civilization, also known as the Harappans. At its peak, this civilization may have supported a population as high as 5 million people, a truly staggering number for the Bronze Age. Their cities, like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, were marvels of engineering that put many later societies to shame. Think about it. Around 2600 BCE, while much of the world was still living in small villages, the Harappans were designing and building meticulously planned cities. They had gridded streets, multi-story brick homes, and even the world's first known urban sanitation systems, complete with toilets that could flush. Their trade networks were enormous, stretching all the way to Mesopotamia. They crafted intricate jewelry from gold and precious stones and created detailed figurines that give us a tiny peek into their daily lives. For centuries, this civilization flourished. They were organized, prosperous, and, from what we can tell, astonishingly peaceful. Unlike many other ancient cultures, archaeologists have found very little evidence of armies, weapons, or major wars. But then, starting around 1900 BCE, the silence began. The bustling cities started to empty. The once thriving trade routes fell quiet. The Harappan civilization, a powerhouse of its time, began to fade away, not with a bang, but with a whisper. So what happened? For decades, the leading theory was a violent invasion, but modern archaeology shows little to support that. Instead, a more familiar suspect has emerged: climate change. Recent research, including a study in the journal Communications, Earth and Environment, points to a series of intense, prolonged droughts that hammered the region. The study identified 4 major droughts, each lasting for decades, which drastically reduced rainfall and dried up crucial waterways like the Ghaggar-Hakra River, a river many believe is the legendary Saraswati. Imagine the impact. The very rivers that were the lifeblood of their farms and trade routes began to shrink and disappear. Without a reliable water supply, crops would have failed, leading to massive food shortages. The trade network that depended on river transport would have crumbled. Faced with centuries of this relentless climate stress, the Harappan people likely began migrating away from their grand cities, moving toward the Ganges basin in smaller, more scattered farming communities. Their society didn't just vanish, it slowly de-urbanized and dispersed, its great cities left to crumble. And the final piece of the puzzle, their written language, remains completely undeciphered, locking their stories, their beliefs, and their final words away forever. Section 2. The Maya, a world transformed. From the river valleys of India, we jump across the globe to the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, where another magnificent civilization rose and fell: the Maya. At its height, the Maya world stretched across the Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, Belize, and parts of Mexico. They were masters of mathematics and astronomy, developing breathtakingly complex calendars and building stunning cities dominated by sky-high pyramids.
Theirs was a world of divine kings, elaborate rituals, and a deep connection to the cosmos. For over 1,000 years, their culture flourished. Cities like Tikal, Copan, and Calakmul were powerful centers, home to hundreds of thousands of people. But around 900 CE, the great cities in the southern lowlands experienced a dramatic decline. The grand pyramids were no longer built, the stone monuments telling the histories of their kings stopped being carved, and the cities were gradually abandoned to be swallowed by the jungle. For years, this was known as the Maya collapse, a mystery that made it seem like an entire people had simply disappeared. But we now know that's not the full story. The Maya didn't actually vanish. Instead, their civilization went through a radical transformation. A recent study in the journal Current Biology used ancient DNA to show that while the population of cities like Copan dropped dramatically, the Maya people themselves endured, maintaining a strong genetic continuity that's still present in the region today. The leading theory now points to a perfect storm of crises: intense, prolonged warfare between competing city-states and severe, multi-decade droughts. This one-two punch proved devastating. Constant warfare exhausted resources and tore society apart. At the same time, long droughts led to famine, making life in the crowded southern cities impossible. There's even a smoking gun at the site of Ucanal in Guatemala, where archaeologists found evidence of a public, fiery ritual where royal items were burned, marking the violent overthrow of a dynasty. Faced with failing crops and endless conflict, the Maya people made a practical choice. They abandoned the failing model of divine kingship and the huge cities in the south. They moved north to places like the Yucatan Peninsula, where new cities like Chichen Itza would eventually rise under a completely new social and political order. So it wasn't an extinction, but a massive reorganization. The people survived, but the magnificent world of the classic Maya, with its towering pyramids and god-kings, was lost to time.
Section 3. The Minoans and the Fury of Nature. Not all collapses were a slow burn. Some were terrifyingly sudden. For our next case, we sailed to the Mediterranean, to the island of Crete, the heart of the Minoan civilization. Flourishing around 2000 BCE, the Minoans were a vibrant, prosperous seafaring culture. Their palaces, like the one at Knossos, were sprawling, labyrinthian complexes built without defensive walls, suggesting a civilization that felt secure on its island home, protected by a powerful navy. They were artists, engineers, and masters of the sea. But around 1600 BCE, their world was violently turned upside down. The prime suspect? One of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history, the eruption of Thera on the nearby island we now call Santorini. For years, this was seen as the single event that destroyed the Minoans. The theory was simple and brutal. A colossal explosion triggered massive tsunamis that would have obliterated the Minoan fleet and their coastal towns. The sky would have darkened with volcanic ash, poisoning farmland and causing widespread famine. However, the story has gotten more complicated. New evidence from ice cores and radiocarbon dating has created a chronological puzzle. Some studies suggest the eruption may have happened a century or more before the final collapse of Minoan power around 1450 BCE. If that's correct, the eruption couldn't have been the direct, single cause of their downfall. So what does this mean? The most likely scenario is a multi-stage collapse. The Thera eruption didn't wipe them out instantly, but it critically wounded them. Their navy, the foundation of their economic and military power, would have been severely damaged. Their trading partners along the coasts would have been devastated. This vulnerability was an open invitation for opportunistic rivals, and there was one waiting in the wings, the Mycenaeans from mainland Greece, a more militaristic and aggressive culture. Archaeological evidence suggests that in the decades after the eruption, as the Minoans were reeling from an environmental catastrophe, the Mycenaeans began to encroach on their territory, eventually conquering Crete itself. It appears to have been a slow death, initiated by the fury of a volcano
and completed by human ambition.
The connecting thread. So, as we piece together the stories of the Harappans, the Maya, and the Minoans, a chilling pattern starts to emerge. While the details are different, a common thread connects many of these fallen giants: the delicate balance between a civilization and its environment. In almost every case, some form of environmental change, whether it was prolonged droughts for the Harappans and Maya or a volcanic cataclysm for the Minoans, played a critical role. These societies weren't just unlucky, they were complex systems that had become fragile. Take the Khmer Empire of Angkor. Their incredible water management system allowed them to thrive, but when the stable climate gave way to extreme cycles of drought and monsoon, that same advanced engineering was overwhelmed, contributing to their fall around 1431 CE. Social and political instability is the other side of the coin. A society weakened by environmental stress becomes ripe for internal conflict or external invasion. The Khmer faced pressure from rising Thai kingdoms, and the Minoans fell to the Mycenaeans. It seems collapse is rarely caused by a single event, but by a domino effect, where one crisis triggers another until the entire system just unravels. These stories from the past show us that no matter how advanced or powerful a civilization becomes, it's never immune to the forces of nature or the consequences of its own actions. Conclusion. From the ghost streets of Harappa to the jungle-swallowed pyramids of the Maya, the legacies of these ancient super-civilizations linger. They aren't just stories of ruin, they're profound cautionary tales. They remind us that progress isn't always permanent, and that even the most advanced societies can be brought to their knees. The mysteries remain: undeciphered scripts, abandoned cities, and the silent ruins that whisper of worlds long gone. What do you think is the biggest lesson we can learn from these lost civilizations? Are there other vanished cultures that fascinate you? Share your theories in the comments below. And if you found this journey into the past as intriguing as we did, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more explorations into history's greatest unsolved mysteries.